over the years, a lot of people told me that 2.5 acres is just not enough to homestead. And truth is I think it's a lot more than a lot of people realize. You know, there's quite a pasture out here for the horses to run on. A lot of space that I never even touched. That 2.5 acres has now doubled since I picked up the neighboring piece of property. And while you can see I've always done a pretty good job of grading and maintaining the road inside of my property, I've never graded the driveway out here because, well, it wasn't mine, but now it is. Okay. So now you can see all of this is mine, and I'm going to maintain the drive here, and I may as well clean up this messy section here. I've been out here 6 years, and every day somebody tells me I need a tractor. I don't really like absolute statements like that because, well, I don't need a tractor. It'd be nice. But for now, there's just a couple tools I need around the homestead, and I think that I can build them. Let's see. So what's the first step in manufacturing a tow behind implement chassis? I think that we need to stop by the Homestead Depot. That part of your homestead's a dump. You know, I think I've got a nice, neat, organized little scrapyard over here. So if I've got trash, I just throw it in these barrels and then I haul them to the dump. But there's items that are valuable. Once a year I go through them and I make sure I remove stuff that's just complete trash. But this piece will probably come in handy today. I have several pieces of angle iron. And back here I've got gold. This is an old grader blade. I've held on to it for 6 years knowing that I would put it to use eventually. So you see, if I make a chassis that I can attach this to, I can easily drag my driveway. And then later I can upgrade to basically, you see how this is, look at just the chassis here. That's basically what I'm building today with a grader blade. Later I can attach an axle to the back, and I can make the tool, the blade, detachable. So then I can add different tools to pull around the homestead, to turn soil and things like that. So the first version will be really simple. I'll just pull it behind the van. But then I'll put a pivot on the back side of that before I attach it to the axle, and a pivot where it hitches to the engine or to the truck, so that the entire chassis can rotate 45 degrees either way. And what that'll allow me to do is to crown the dirt road eventually. So I'll be able to go down this side and just carve out a big old gutter, or a swell basically, and then do it down the other side. And that'll crown my driveway so it should never flood. And I can continue to redirect all that water like I've been doing for years. You know, I pull all that water off the drive to the pond. So here's an old bent axle I have that'll do just fine for grading the driveway. I can attach it to that. I've been using it as if it's a piece of weightlifting equipment. But now it's going to graduate. So that axle is off of a trailer, the first trailer I pulled onto the property with. And that trailer, you can see the axle's bent. It wasn't enough to haul water, and it got pretty damaged, so I just cut it up. I needed a aquaponics system, so I turned it into a tank. So see, there's about a 400-gallon vinyl tank for the fish, and then a grow bed up here for aquaponics. This is the old trailer. And on the front of the trailer, There just happens to be a nice old hitch, and I can cut this off and put it on the front of my new chassis. Alright, I had to charge the camera. I'm sure you guys didn't really need to see the little welds and things I did anyway. So far what I've done is welded up 2 pieces of angle iron. That makes the tube down the center. Then I've got these larger pieces of angle iron to brace everything. And I cut them across, which should be flush with the piece I'll attach at the base here. And then I'll make it so I can attach the blade or remove the blade and put on a different tool. So I think I have another spool of wire, but just to be safe, I've just been, well, tack welding kind of. I spot weld some spots, and then I've done several, like for the tube I did 1 foot welded solid, a bead, and then a foot not, and then a foot welded. And that way I can come back and fill in those blanks later, but I wanted to at least get everything laid out today. So you can see how the 2 angle iron pieces are just welded together to make a tube. And then there's bracing. And now this is the, this is the piece that on the other side is where I'll attach different tools. One thing to go here. So the last thing to do, which I'll do tomorrow. I'm getting sunburnt, but this blade stands up this way. Oh, and it'll attach like this. So there'll be holes, bolts that go through, and it'll bolt on. And that way I can change the tool anytime I want to something else, if I want to plow or something. And I'll show you this end too. So there's the grater blade. And then the hitch, instead of just welding the hitch on, I put these flanges on the side, and that will allow the hitch to articulate. And I'll be able to just pull the pin out, remove this, and when I do get a tractor, I can make a 3-point attachment and just throw on the 3-point and bolt it on to pull it around with the tractor. So once that's done, I can just throw this on the back of the truck and pull it around, and it'll just be a tow behind grater. But then I can add a piece that connects that to an axle and make it so that the entire piece can rotate. So there'll need to be another pivot up here somewhere. Probably I can just cut the middle, throw in a pivot. There will be a pivot here, a pivot in the back, and the grater will be able to rotate And that way I can crown the road and dig out carve-outs down the sides so the road will drain. And now I've prepared for you 45 minutes of grading the driveway. I'm kidding. But I figured I'd show you in under a couple of minutes what I did. The first run I made down and back, I did so with no weight on the grader just to see how it handled it. And then I added a heavy rim and tire and 2 brake rotors. The grader itself is probably about 150 pounds, and with the other things on it, it's got to be 250, 300 pounds. And then it started to really grade well. And the first time I disconnected it to turn around, but then I was surprised to see how well it actually backs up. And where there were heavy chunky ground that needed to be moved, I used it in reverse and was able to kind of scrape it out of the way like a tractor might. I even created that turnaround from scratch where there was never a turnaround before. And this entrance point to my property was really busted up, and now it's pretty smooth. So this had mostly been maintained pretty well, but this piece going back to where the horse stables are has always been a real mess. But you can see it's pretty smoothed out now, and